Arkansas Times on Friday, June the 16th. The latest episode in The Apprentice President today. Donald Trump admits in his own Twitter account that he is under a criminal investigation for obstruction of justice. He blames this on a deputy attorney general for firing James Comey. This from the man who said in his own Twitter account that he fired James Comey. Well, more to come on this continuing TV show, and it'll keep the talk shows busy on the cable networks for sure. Also from Washington today, I turn your attention to Vox. You can find my link on the Arkansas blog to it. They ask 8 U.S. senators, all Republicans, just what's going on in this secret health care bill that they're trying to come up with. One of the 8 was John Bozeman of Arkansas. An extensive interview with him revealed, well, precisely zero. It was a lot of mush and about how they were going to fix up this bad Obamacare. How? He wasn't ready to say that just yet. Kind of more of the same from John Bozeman, who's never been the sharpest knife in the Arkansas drawer up there. Good news back in Arkansas. The unemployment rate last month dropped to 3.4%. That's down another tick from the 3.5 the month before. Another historic low unemployment rate, and the size of the workforce grew to a size that hadn't been seen since 2008. A lot of people are working in Arkansas. In West Memphis today, the sheriff said that 4 people had been charged with manslaughter and the death Monday of a child left in a daycare van all day when he was forgotten in the van after being picked up to go to the daycare facility at Ascent Health Care for Children. There were 2 drivers and the person in charge of transportation and the person in charge of safe operation of these vehicles. They did not include any charges against higher-up executives in the company. This is the firm headed by State Representative Dan Sullivan of Jonesboro, who's been a leader in trying to deregulate the child care industry. That center where the child died is closed this week because of an outbreak of a bacterial infection that has left dozens of people ill. Sullivan has not been available to talk about this situation, or perhaps if things could have been any better there if we'd had a little stricter regulation. He got a serious amount of regulation taken away from child care facilities in the last legislative session, the only piece of legislation he passed. The ACLU and Planned Parenthood that operates Planned Parenthood facilities in Arkansas have announced a news conference next week to talk about new litigation. This has long been expected. The Arkansas passed 6 laws in the last session aimed at discouraging women from exercising their constitutional right to have an abortion in Arkansas. Some of the bills have been struck down as unconstitutional in other states. They're all a thin veneer. What they are is about making abortion impossible to obtain in Arkansas, and generally speaking, the courts have held that impermissible. We'll see where these will go, but there are many lawsuits to come, apparently. We're waiting for some news this afternoon. Check back to the Arkansas blog.com on a couple of things. One is a giant class action lawsuit in federal court in Little Rock in which thousands of people who were paid royalties for gas drilling on their land in the Fayetteville Shale in Arkansas say that Southwestern Energy and its affiliates paid them less than they should have by making improper expense deductions. This case has also drawn interest because the plaintiff's lawyers in this case said lawyers in another class action case that struck a $45 million settlement colluded to produce a settlement that was good for the company, good for the lawyers, but not so good for landowners, and that's another issue that may be decided when this case is completed. It's the 10th day of a jury trial. They're in the final throes of that case today. Also, the Arkansas Bar Association is meeting in Hot Springs for its annual convention. On the agenda this afternoon is a vote by the House of Delegates, the organization, on whether that organization will formally endorse a proposed constitutional amendment that would be a counteraction to an amendment adopted by the legislature earlier this year and sent to voters in 2018. The legislature and the business community want to make it just about impossible to file damage suits, particularly against health institutions and nursing homes. The Bar Association would allow a more reasonable limit on damages and lawyer fees, and the legislative amendment would allow. It would also keep rulemaking for courts with the judges of the Arkansas Supreme Court, not with the legislature, which is certainly a good idea. It also includes some ethics legislation to disclose more about the sources of campaign financing. The Chamber of Commerce has really been putting the pressure on lawyers that work on its payroll to vote against this proposal at the House of Delegates. It's going to take a supermajority vote to pass that this afternoon. We'll be watching that. Some 1,100 people turned out at an ASU campus today for the funeral of Patrick Weatherford, the Newport police lieutenant who was killed when he gave chase after a car break-in suspect and was fatally shot. In a sad day in Arkansas for all people who support law enforcement. And finally, speaking of law enforcement and the dangers that they sometimes encounter, U.S. Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana remains in serious condition in a Washington hospital after being shot on a baseball practice field earlier this week by a deranged gunman who was himself shot down by police. Scalise has an interesting background. He's particularly known for a long campaign against equal rights for gay people and against same-sex marriage. Well, it turns out that among the Capitol Police who prevented a tremendous loss of life on that baseball field earlier this week was a member of the Capitol Police, a woman who is a married lesbian. And she apparently, according to Jeff Flake, a senator who was there, was a woman who fired the critical shot that brought the carnage to an end. So there's a small irony in that a married lesbian helped a man who's spent a lifetime in politics fighting against people like her having that right to marriage. We're resisting here. I'm Max Brantley. I'll be back next week.